The Great Council of Velcor Prime had seen many species rise and fall across the galaxy. We had witnessed the mighty Krex Empire crumble under their own arrogance, watched the brilliant Nexari vanish into their own technological hubris, and observed countless civilizations that thought they were special, until they weren't. So when the humans arrived with their ridiculous request, naturally, we laughed. Well, most of us laughed. I'll admit, as Chief Xenobiologist Crix 9, I found their audacity fascinating. "Let me understand this correctly," rumbled High Chancellor Vorthak, his 6 eyes blinking in what could only be described as bewildered amusement. "Your species, which barely discovered faster-than-light travel 50 rotations ago, wants to participate in the galactic combat trials." The human representative, a female called Captain Maya Torres, stood unflinching before the towering assembly. She was small, even by human standards, her dark hair pulled back in what they called a ponytail. Her brown eyes held something that made my secondary brain tingle with unease. Confidence? No, something more dangerous than that. "That's correct, Chancellor," she replied, her voice steady as a neutron star's pulse. The chamber erupted in what humans might call laughter, but sounded more like a symphony of dying space whales. The galactic combat trials hadn't seen a new species compete in over 3,000 rotations. The last attempt had been the Zephyrians, and, well, let's just say they made excellent fertilizer for the victors' homeworld gardens. Councillor Ixtal of the Hegemony leaned forward, his crystalline form refracting the chamber's light into prismatic patterns. "Young human, do you comprehend what you're requesting? The trials are not some primitive gladiatorial contest. They are the ultimate test of species worthiness, combining strategy, technology, individual combat prowess, and survival instincts. The death rate is—" He paused dramatically. 100%. For the losers, anyway. Captain Torres tilted her head slightly. "So you're saying the winners don't die?" The silence that followed could have been weaponized. "Well," Ixtal stammered, "obviously the victors survive, but—" "Then we only need to win," she interrupted with a shrug that somehow conveyed both dismissal and threat. Simple enough. Oh, the arrogance. It was delicious. I found myself leaning forward in my observation pod, all 4 of my primary eyes focused on this tiny creature that had just casually dismissed the most lethal competition in galactic history. High Enforcer Grakthor, a mountain of muscle and malevolent intent from the warrior planet Brutalis, stood slowly. His scarred hide rippled with barely contained violence. "Human," he growled, each word dripping with contempt. "I have personally eviscerated 17 species in the trials. My trophy room is decorated with the skulls of champions who thought they were special. Your kind's greatest. Warriors couldn't survive 1 rotation against a Brutalis child." Captain Torres studied him for a moment, then turned to address the entire council. "I notice none of you have asked about our qualifications." "Your qualifications?" Chancellor Vorthak's laugh shook the chamber's foundations. "Child, we've observed your species. You've been at war with yourselves for your entire recorded history. You've nearly destroyed your own planet multiple times. Your technology is primitive, your lifespan brief, your physical capabilities laughably inferior to any Tier 1 civilization. Your point being?" The casual response sent another wave of uncomfortable silence through the assembly. I activated my personal recording device. This was becoming historically significant. "My point," the Chancellor continued, his voice rising with indignation, "is that your species lacks the fundamental requirements for survival in the trials. You have no natural armor, no energy manipulation capabilities, no telepathic coordination, no genetic enhancement protocols. You're right, Torres agreed cheerfully. We don't have any of those things. Then why? Counselor Vrex of the Synthesis Coalition interjected. Would you possibly believe you could succeed where species infinitely more advanced than yours have failed? The human smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. In fact, it reminded me uncomfortably of the expression worn by Cathari hunting spiders just before they struck. Because, she said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper, forcing the entire council to strain to hear. You've never fought something that has absolutely nothing left to lose and refuses to quit. Inspirational speeches won't stop plasma bolts, human, snarled Grakthor. No, Torres agreed, but superior tactics, adaptive strategy, and sheer bloody-minded stubbornness tend to work wonders. Plus, we have something none of your previous opponents possessed. And what miraculous advantage is that? Chancellor Vorthak asked mockingly. We're crazy. The statement hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Several council members exchanged nervous glances. Crazy? Councillor Ixtal's crystalline form flickered uncertainly. Completely, utterly, magnificently insane, Torres confirmed with evident pride. See, that's the problem with all your advanced civilizations. You're logical, predictable. You follow established patterns, optimal strategies, calculated risks. You fight wars the way wars are supposed to be fought. She began pacing, her movement patterns erratic enough to make my threat assessment protocols twitch. We don't do that. We fight dirty. We improvise. We turn our weaknesses into weapons and our weapons into surprises. When logic says retreat, we double down. When mathematics says we can't win, we change the mathematics. Ridiculous, boomed Enforcer Kralax from the Military Stratification Authority. Tactics without logic are mere flailing. Strategy requires calculation. ! Torres stopped pacing and fixed him with a stare that made several nearby council members visibly flinch. Tell that to Hannibal. Who? Human general. Faced an enemy with superior numbers, better equipment, and the home field advantage. Logic said he couldn't win. So he marched war elephants across mountains that everyone knew were impassable and attacked from a direction his enemies thought was impossible. Did he win? Counselor Vrex asked, despite himself. He won battles that should have been losses, and turned the word impossible into a suggestion rather than a fact. Chancellor Vorthak leaned back in his ceremonial throne, his expression thoughtful. One example does not constitute. Would you like more? Torres interrupted. Because human history is essentially a catalogue of people doing things that every expert said couldn't be done. We have an entire cultural obsession with defying odds that would make rational species surrender immediately. She gestured expansively, and I noticed several council members tracking her movements with the wariness typically reserved for unexploded ordnance. We've fought wars where we were outnumbered 10 to 1 and won. We've survived planetary disasters that should have ended our species. We've built civilizations on continents that actively tried to kill us, then called them vacation destinations. Your examples are meaningless historical trivia, Grakthor rumbled, but I noticed his aggressive posture had shifted slightly. Almost defensive. Are they? Torres asked sweetly. Let me ask you something, Enforcer. In your 17 victories, how many opponents fought back after losing limbs? None, obviously. Wounded opponents surrender or die. Interesting, because humans have a documented medical condition called too angry to die. We have soldiers who continued fighting after losing arms, legs, and various internal organs. We have pilots who landed planes while clinically dead. We have individuals who survived in environments that our own scientists calculated should have killed them in minutes. The council chamber had grown uncomfortably quiet. I found myself checking my life support systems. Moreover, Torres continued conversationally, we have a cultural tradition of celebrating failures that were almost successes and treating impossible odds as personal challenges rather than sensible reasons to quit. This is merely psychological posturing, declared Counselor Zephax from the academic collective. Actual combat requires more than mental determination. Does it? Torres pulled a small device from her belt. Several council members reached for their weapons before realizing it was merely a data tablet. I have here the complete psychological profiles, combat histories, and tactical assessments of every species that has participated in the trials for the past 5,000 rotations. She activated the device, and holographic displays materialized above the chamber floor. Every single species followed predictable patterns. When outmatched, they attempted logical tactical withdrawals. When faced with superior firepower, they sought cover and attempted to minimize casualties. When confronted with seemingly impossible odds, they calculated probability matrices and acted accordingly. The displays shifted, showing tactical maps and engagement analyses. In other words, they all fought like rational beings trying to survive. As opposed to, Chancellor Vorthak asked, though his tone had lost its mockery, fighting like humans trying to win. Torres manipulated the display, highlighting specific battle sequences. See, here's what your analysis missed. Every one of these species had something to lose. Homeworlds, populations, cultures, futures. They fought carefully because defeat meant extinction. And humans are different because? The smile returned, sharper than before. Because we're already extinct. The words hit the council like a quantum torpedo. Several members actually recoiled. Impossible, whispered Councillor Vrex. You're obviously alive. Are we? Torres asked cheerfully. Our homeworld is dying. Our population is unsustainable. Our resources are depleted. Our political systems are collapsing. By every metric your civilizations use to measure species viability, we should have vanished centuries ago. She gestured toward the tactical displays. Every species in these records fought to preserve something. We have nothing left to preserve. We're operating on borrowed time with stolen resources and sheer stubborn refusal to admit we're already dead. The silence that followed felt like the void between stars. Which brings us to the interesting part, Torres continued, her voice taking on an almost musical quality that raised my threat assessment readings into the danger zone. The trials offer the victor control over 3-star systems, plus tributary rights to 17 resource worlds, plus recognition as a Tier 1 civilization with full council voting privileges. Yes, Chancellor Vorthak confirmed slowly. The traditional rewards for species advancement. In other words, everything we need to not be extinct anymore. Theoretically, yes, but no theoretically about it. Win the trials, save humanity. Lose the trials, die slightly faster than we're already dying. Torres deactivated the display and returned the tablet to her belt. So you see, council members, you're not just facing another ambitious species looking to advance their status. You're facing a species that has exactly one remaining option: victory or extinction. She took a step closer to the council assembly, and I swear the temperature in the chamber dropped several degrees. Now, the question isn't whether we qualify for the trials. The question is, who wants to bet their civilization's future against a species that literally has nothing left to lose? The following silence stretched longer than a neutron star's rotation period. Finally, Chancellor Vorthak cleared his throat. The Council will consider your application. Actually, Torres said casually, there's one more thing. Which is, I wasn't asking for permission. The chamber erupted into chaos. Several council members rose to their feet, shouting in various languages. Security forces began mobilizing. Weapon systems powered up throughout the facility. Through it all, Captain Maya Torres stood perfectly still, that disturbing smile never leaving her face. When the noise finally subsided, Chancellor Vorthak's voice carried the weight of barely controlled fury. Human, you seem to be under the impression that the galactic combat trials are some sort of voluntary exhibition. They are not. Participation requires unanimous council approval, extensive preparation periods, and adherence to strict protocols developed over millennia. Oh, I understand completely, Torres replied, which is why I'm not participating in your trials. Then what? The Chancellor asked dangerously. Are you doing? I'm invoking Article 7 of the Galactic Accords. The chaos that erupted made the previous outburst seem like a polite discussion. Council members were screaming, alarms were blaring, and at least 3 different factions appeared to be drawing weapons on each other. Article 7. The survival right. The one provision in galactic law that no civilization could vote to overturn, because it had been written by the precursors themselves before they vanished into whatever realm awaits species that transcend physical existence. Any species facing extinction could invoke Article 7 to demand trial by combat for the right to continued existence. The challenged parties could either grant the requesting species sufficient resources for survival, or face them in combat under precursor rules. Precursor rules, which stripped away all technological advantages, all numerical superiority, all environmental controls. Pure skill against skill, will against will, life against life. You can't, whispered Councillor Ixtal, his crystalline form flickering rapidly. Article 7 hasn't been invoked in over 10,000 rotations. Because, Torres said cheerfully, most species aren't stupid enough to bet their existence on single combat. Her smile widened. Lucky for you, we're not most species. Chancellor Vorthak's voice came out as barely a whisper. Who do you challenge? Torres looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every council member present. All of you. The aftermath of Torres's declaration felt like standing in the eye of a galactic storm. Emergency protocols activated throughout the station. Blast shields slammed shut over viewing ports, and automated defense systems began their ominous humming. I watched from my observation pod as centuries of diplomatic protocol crumbled faster than a quantum tunneling particle. High Chancellor, Vorthak's composure finally snapped completely. His massive frame shook with rage as he bellowed, "You insane creature! Do you comprehend what you've just done? Article 7 allows for single combat, not mass suicide." Actually, Torres replied, consulting her tablet with infuriating calm. If you read subsection 12.4, a challenged party may select representatives to fight in their place. Since you're all here, and you all represent different civilizations, I'm technically challenging your entire alliance structure? She looked up from the device with that predatory smile again. Unless, of course, you'd prefer to grant humanity the resources we need for survival. 3 habitable systems should do it. Maybe some basic terraforming equipment. A few billion tons of rare metals. The silence stretched, until Counselor Vrex finally spoke, his voice hollow with disbelief. "You're holding the entire Galactic Order hostage." "Hostage implies I took something that didn't belong to me," Torres corrected. "I'm simply exercising humanity's legal right to not go extinct quietly." Enforcer Grakthor stepped forward, his scarred hide rippling with anticipation. "Fine, human. I accept your challenge. I'll crush your bones to powder and hang your skin in my trophy chamber." "Oh, you misunderstand," Torres said, waving dismissively. "I'm not fighting anyone." The confusion in the chamber became almost tangible. Even I found myself recalibrating my sensors. "Article 7 requires the challenging species to provide a champion," she continued. "I'm just the diplomat." Chancellor Vorthak's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Then who is your champion, human?" The main chamber doors, massive constructs designed to withstand orbital bombardment, suddenly groaned. Not the mechanical whine of opening mechanisms, but the tortured sound of metal being stressed beyond its design limits. Every head in the chamber turned toward the entrance. The doors weren't opening. They were being bent outward from the other side. "That," Torres said cheerfully, "would be him." The doors exploded inward with a sound like a dying star. Through the smoke and debris walked something that made every threat assessment system in the chamber scream warnings. He was human, obviously, but built on a scale that defied their species' typical parameters. Nearly 3 meters tall, broad enough to eclipse smaller council members, and moving with a fluidity that suggested his massive frame contained no unnecessary mass. His skin bore intricate patterns that might have been scars, tattoos, or something else entirely. His eyes held the same unsettling confidence as Torres, but amplified to levels that registered as genuine menace. "Council members," Torres announced proudly, "meet Staff Sergeant Jake Morrison, formerly of the Human Colonial Marines Extinction Protocol Division." Morrison's gaze swept the chamber with the methodical precision of someone cataloging targets. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of distant thunder. "Ma'am, are these the folks who think humanity doesn't deserve to survive?" "That's correct, Sergeant." He nodded slowly, then addressed the council directly. "Gentlemen, ladies, and assorted sentient life forms, I understand you have some concerns about my species' qualifications." The understatement was so profound it approached philosophical territory. Grakthor, to his credit, stepped forward without hesitation. "Human warrior, I am High Enforcer Grakthor of Brutalis. I have killed champions from 17 species. Your death will be swift." Morrison studied the alien warrior with professional interest. 17 species, huh? Impressive." "Indeed. What is your combat record, human?" Morrison's expression remained utterly neutral. "I killed 17 species before breakfast this morning." The statement hung in the air like antimatter waiting to destabilize. "Impossible," Grakthor snarled. "No single being could—" "Oh, I didn't do it personally," Morrison clarified. "I just authorized the deployment of humanity's latest diplomatic solution, the Omega-class planet Cracker. Took out an entire hegemony outpost, roughly 800 million individuals across 17 different species." The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop below absolute zero. You committed genocide?" whispered Counselor Ixtal. "Nah," Morrison replied casually. "Genocide is when you target a specific group for elimination. This was just Tuesday morning target practice." Torres stepped forward helpfully. "The sergeant is being modest. He's actually responsible for the complete sterilization of the Proxima incursion, the systematic dismantling of the Kepler rebellion, and the incident we refer to as the day the universe learned to duck." "The day the universe what?" Chancellor Vorthak asked faintly. We tested our first stellar compression weapon, Morrison explained. Turns out when you collapse a star into a singularity and then destabilize it, the resulting explosion has a tendency to make neighboring solar systems nervous. He paused thoughtfully. Also uninhabitable for roughly 50,000 rotations, but that was more of a side effect than a design feature. The council members exchanged glances that spoke volumes about their rapidly deteriorating confidence levels. These claims are absurd, declared Councillor Zephax from the academic collective. No species develops such destructive capabilities without achieving corresponding levels of wisdom and restraint. Morrison and Torres looked at each other and began laughing. Not the polite chuckles of diplomatic amusement, but the genuine, unrestrained laughter of people who had just heard something genuinely hilarious. Wisdom and restraint, Morrison gasped between laughs. Oh, that's good. Tell him about the nuclear age, Sergeant, Torres suggested. Right. So we developed planet-killing weapons approximately 60 tide rotations before we figured out how to leave our own solar system, Morrison explained to the horrified council. Then we built enough of them to sterilize our homeworld several times over. For deterrence purposes? Councillor Vrex asked hopefully. Nah, mostly because we couldn't agree on who got to control them, Torres interjected. So everybody built their own. Then we spent the next 50 rotations pointing them at each other while simultaneously developing bigger ones. During which time, Morrison continued, we also invented biological weapons, chemical warfare, genetic modification viruses, nanotechnology swarms, and something we called the Internet, which somehow managed to be more destructive than all the others combined. The silence that followed could have been registered as a new form of vacuum. Finally, Enforcer Kralax from the Military Stratification Authority found his voice. If your species is so destructively capable, why haven't you conquered the galaxy? Morrison considered the question seriously. Mostly because we've been too busy trying to conquer each other. Plus, galactic conquest sounds like a lot of paperwork. Also, Torres added, we only recently discovered that other intelligent species existed. Before that, we assumed the universe was empty, and we were alone. How did that make you feel? Councillor Ixtal asked, his crystalline form flickering with what might have been curiosity. Disappointed, Morrison replied immediately. We were really looking forward to having someone new to fight. The casual admission sent another wave of unease through the assembly. Chancellor Vorthak leaned forward, his voice carefully controlled. Sergeant Morrison, assuming your claims are accurate, what makes you believe you can defeat our greatest champions in single combat? Morrison's expression became thoughtful. Well, sir, it's like this. Your champions are trained to fight other champions. Professional warriors with rules, codes of honor, established tactics. He gestured around the chamber. I was trained to fight wars, not battles, not duels, wars, against enemies who didn't follow rules, didn't have honor codes, and whose only tactic was kill everything that moves until nothing moves anymore. The difference being? Grakthor demanded. Champions fight to win, Morrison said simply. I fight to end things. Torres activated her tablet again, and new holographic displays materialized. These showed not tactical analyses, but medical scans, psychological profiles, and something that looked disturbingly like weapon schematics. The sergeant's enhancement profile is rather unique, she explained conversationally. Standard colonial marine modification includes reinforced skeletal structure, enhanced muscle density, accelerated healing, improved reflexes, and expanded pain tolerance. Standard modifications, Councillor Virex squeaked. Oh yes, every human soldier gets the basic package. But extinction. Protocol operatives receive additional enhancements. The medical displays shifted, showing cross-sections that made several council members visibly recoil. Redundant organ systems, subcutaneous armor plating, enhanced adrenal production, modified nervous system for improved reaction time, and something we call the Berserker Protocol. Which is, Chancellor Vorthak asked, though his expression suggested he didn't really want to know. Morrison smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. It was not an improvement. Combat stimulants and neurological modifications that eliminate fear, pain sensitivity, and behavioral inhibitions while amplifying aggression and tactical awareness. In layman's terms, Torres added helpfully, it turns him into a murder machine that gets smarter and more dangerous the more damage he takes. The beauty of the system, Morrison continued, is that it's completely irreversible once activated. No surrender, no retreat, no mercy. Just constant escalation until either the target is eliminated or I am. He looked around the chamber with professional interest. Of course, I haven't found anything yet that could eliminate me while the protocol was active, so it's mostly been the first option. The council chamber had become so quiet that I could hear individual heartbeats from species 3 rows away. Enforcer Grakthor, visibly struggling to maintain his composure, stepped forward again. Human, your boasts mean nothing. I challenge you to prove them. Morrison looked to Torres, who shrugged. Article 7 protocols are now in effect. Combat may commence at the challenging party's discretion. Excellent, Grakthor snarled, drawing a weapon that looked like it could carve holes in reality. I'll make this quick. Morrison didn't move, didn't even shift his stance. Sergeant, Torres said quietly, you have authorization to activate extinction protocol measures. Copy that, ma'am. What happened next defied several fundamental laws of physics and at least one philosophical principle about the nature of existence. Morrison didn't attack Grakthor. He simply looked at him. But something in that look, some quality that registered on frequencies I didn't know existed, caused the massive alien warrior to freeze mid-charge. Then Morrison moved. I've observed combat across 17 different gravity fields in environments ranging from gaseous nebulae to crystallized time distortions. I've analyzed the fighting techniques of over 200 species, many of which operate outside conventional space-time parameters. Nothing had prepared me for watching a human under extinction protocol conditions. Morrison covered the distance to Grakthor faster than my sensors could track. The impact when they collided registered on seismic monitors 3 levels down. The resulting combat was less a fight than a demonstration of what happened when an unstoppable force encountered something insufficiently immovable. It was over in 12 seconds. When the dust settled, Morrison stood over Grakthor's unconscious form, completely uninjured and breathing normally. The alien warrior, who had boasted of 17 kills, lay in a crater roughly his own size and shape. Morrison looked around the chamber with polite interest. Next? The silence that followed stretched into geological timescales. Finally, Chancellor Vorthak cleared his throat. The Council recognizes humanity's claim under Article 7. We will grant your species the requested resources for continued survival. Excellent, Torres said brightly. Oh, and one more thing. What now? The Chancellor asked wearily. The Sergeant's enhancement modifications are reversible. Grakthor will recover completely in a few hours, with nothing worse than wounded pride and a new perspective on human capabilities. Morrison nodded confirmation. We don't actually enjoy killing folks. We just want everyone to understand that we're really, really good at it when necessary. "Consider the point made," Counselor Ixtal said faintly. Torres gathered her equipment and gestured toward the chamber exit. "Pleasure doing business with you, Council members. We'll expect the resource transfer within 30 rotations." As they reached the ruined doorway, Morrison paused and looked back. "Oh, and gentlemen, next time someone asks if you want to bet against humanity?" He smiled that disturbing smile. "The answer is no." They left the council chamber in ruins, both literally and figuratively. I remained in my observation pod for several hours after the emergency sessions concluded, reviewing my recordings and trying to process what I had witnessed. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not simply won their survival rights. They had demonstrated that everything the galactic community thought it knew about power, warfare, and species capability was fundamentally flawed. They were not the strongest species in the galaxy, nor the smartest, nor the most technologically advanced, but they were something potentially more dangerous than any of those things. They were desperate. And desperation, combined with ingenuity and an apparent complete disregard for conventional limitations, created possibilities that no rational analysis could predict or counter. The Council had asked who wanted to bet their life against humanity. The answer, as it turned out, was no one.